Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. Once again, we are in person. I am looking Andy directly in the face, not on a computer screen, but his real life, three-dimensional, wonderful face.
The boys are back in town, reunited, and it feels so good.
Yeah, can we get a clip?
Together Forever?
No, we don't have the copyright for that.
Darn it. Yeah. Friends Forever by Zack Attack. Can we get the copyright to that?
Let me see. No.
Oh, man.
So,
right.
unfortunately,
we're back. And I'm Andy, and I'm so glad that I'm looking at your face, not through a computer screen.
Yeah, don't have to wear our bulky headphones.
Nope.
There's no lag. There's no delay on the audio. It is just us having our normal in-person conversation for the podcast.
Like the good old days.
It just feels natural. It feels right.
It does. But I'm glad that you got a summer away.
Yeah, it was a good refreshing summer.
Good.
It was like a sabbatical from work for me, just to clear my mind of everything. And I'm not ready for it to reclutter. That's what I feel like.
Yeah.
You get your house clean and it's like, immediately like you've got like a party or something that's going to wreck it. That's what summer break feels like. It's like, I've got my house clean. And then as soon as work starts,
chaos.
But that's okay.
We're not worried about that right now.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
We're back and we're happy.
Yeah, we still get to talk about movies.
We do.
So that's the most important thing.
It's also worth noting that you've only been back for less than 48 hours, and we have already watched a movie together.
That's true.
Not in the theater.
Right.
But we have watched a movie together.
We did, yeah. So I got back Friday night.
Yeah. I
spent my Saturday, the early part of the day, going to see the movie we're going to be talking about, and then my Saturday evening, that's right, hanging out with you and other friends, and we watched a movie together, and that's the ideal day for me right there.
What a great day. And I should just say, we watched Collateral. Tom Cruise. What better way to reunite with your friend after a summer apart than Tom Cruise? He helped start this podcast. He helped bridge the gap between you being gone and being back, and then he was there last night for us. Tom Cruise. He just does it all.
He's he's just become a real important figure in our podcast.
Yeah, so hopefully, the negotiations go well and he'll be here with us one day.
Yeah.
I think that's probably going to happen.
For sure. He'll parachute in, probably just land breaking through the window.
Beat
right
both of us up and then take over the podcast, and we'll be okay with that.
Yeah, when he leaves, he'll say, "Excuse me, guys, I got to run." And then he'll look in camera and wink, and he'll run.
He'll just be gone. He will. Tom Cruise run.
Oh, man. Well, we're not here to talk about Sir Thomas Cruise today.
No,
as much as
we will talk about him again one day. I know we will.
Today we are talking about the newest release from writer-director M. Night Shyamalan, his new movie that came out this weekend, Trap.
Yeah.
Trap, to me, is one of the several movies I'll say that has come out this year that I have been excited for from a curiosity level.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to put
it's not one of those movies where I'm, the Furiosas and such, where I said, I'm excited because I think this is going to be really great.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of that's an interesting concept from an interesting filmmaker.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah. And so that's, leads us to our conversation for today. We, like I said, we never want to share. We never want to tip our hand to each other before we get to the podcast. So we acknowledged that we saw it. We hung out all last night and didn't say anything. And so we are going to get right into the crux of it with just this basic question. Andy, is Trap good?
Probably not, but that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. Is that a fair answer?
I think that's not only a fair answer. I think that's just the right answer. I think that is the correct answer. Because I was watching the movie and I was going, I don't think this is really working. I don't think this is a good movie. Mm-hmm. That said, I am not uninvested. I am not uninterested.
Yeah.
This is kind of a good, bad movie, if that makes sense.
And you know what? Honestly, it's the kind of movie I honestly wish they would make more of in a weird way. And I guess I just mean like, it's not pre-existing IP. It's not a franchise. It's not a remake. It's not a reboot. It's not a reimagining. It very much reminded me of something that would have come out in like 1997, like in like April of 1997, before the summer movie season started. You would like that happened in a weird way. It made me think of like the Kurt Russell movie Breakdown.
Okay.
I think we've even talked about that movie on here before. Like that came out 97 or 98. I don't remember which one, in like April. And I went to see it with my dad and we were just like, you know what? That was okay. Like, it's kind of ridiculous, but it was interesting, and I was interested in it. And in a weird way, Trap reminded me of that.
Yeah, that's a very good comparison,
Like,
because even Breakdown, it's like kind of that great just elevator pitch movie.
Like a 2-sentence movie pitch. And it was like, you know what? I could sit here and pick this movie apart, and, you know, there's a lot of parts of it that it really stretches any kind of credibility, but can't say I didn't enjoy it. And that's honestly kind of how I felt about Trap. And it wouldn't bother me if more movies came out like that are not reaching for the stars, that are not going to be anybody's best of the year by any stretch of the imagination, but where you can go, oh, you know what? He had an interesting idea. He went for it, for better or worse. And I got to sit there and enjoy it for an hour and 40 minutes, hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm not mad that this movie exists.
Yeah. So I'm definitely not landing on it's a bad movie. It's a movie not worth seeing. I think it's a flawed movie than which we're going to discuss a lot of the flaws. And once again, it's one of those movies we'll probably come across sounding more negative on it than we actually felt about it. So we both want to be clear, like, it's a solid movie.
It wasn't bad at all.
Yeah. So I just want to sort of walk through the course of the movie, what happens in it. So, we'll go ahead and say spoilers here, because obviously the big spoilers come closer to the end. But, just for the sake of covering our tracks, we'll say spoilers from here.
Anytime you go to a Shyamalan movie, you just you got to know, like, there's going to be spoilers involved. So,
so this movie, I felt like kicks off, like, very quickly, like, because the idea is he's going to a concert with his daughter, and then the trap is set.
Yeah.
Well, the movie starts with them going into the concert. Like, it doesn't have any sort of build up before, like, we're here and this is where we're starting.
And I got to say, right off the bat, I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like, I don't need 25 minutes of setup for them to just get to the concert. I mean, they're in the car. They're driving to the concert, and they're there in about 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, I was like, thank you. Don't need a bunch of unnecessary mumbo jumbo before the movie.
Yeah. So I thought, wow, this movie is really going to get into it quickly. It didn't quite get into it really quickly.
Right.
There's a lot of concert in this movie. I'm just going to say that. That's one of my first notes is, like, they basically had to create a Taylor Swift-esque concert. I'm guessing that's the template that they were trying to model.
I would say so.
Is a Taylor Swift-esque concert. And it's necessary for the movie that, like, they've got to spend time in that concert doing that. But as I'm watching, I'm like,
spend time in that concert.
Yeah, like, I'm really like, did I accidentally come see a concert movie, or is this this is a movie that takes place in a concert? So there is a lot of that. And that said, like, part of it is there's just a lot of time to fill, and sort of necessarily you've got to feel like they're at that concert for a while. What else can you do besides show them sitting there and watching the concert?
It's kind of like a necessary evil for the story he constructed.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of concert. And again, some of my thoughts about the movie aren't even probably really about the movie. All I could think was, it's crazy to me that there are concerts that are like that. I think, again, I've never been to one. I think girls do go and, like, freak out over Taylor Swift concerts, evidently based on the money it makes and the amount of people that go.
Yeah.
And watching, like, the daughter character just freaking out and screaming and all that, I'm just like, I'm not a dad of any sort. I'm not a girl dad for sure.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine having to be the dad and just, pretending to be excited with my daughter and that sort of thing. Have you ever had to take Molly to, not even necessarily a concert, anything like that that's, like, clearly just for her? I guess Molly or Katie. And
yeah, I mean, I think inevitably as a parent, you have to do that a little bit. I haven't had to do that a lot because, like, we didn't have to jump in on the Taylor Swift stuff because we're not trillionaires who can afford Taylor Swift concerts. I think you have to play that game a little bit as a parent. I've never had to be, like, fully immersed in something like in this movie. And then luckily, like, like with Molly, especially, her movie taste and my movie taste have always aligned pretty well. So I was thinking, like, even having to go to a movie, I've never had to been like, yay, Cars 3 or whatever. I mean, I had to play that game a little bit, but I've never had to fully do it. But I think any parent, you can identify with that a little bit of the, like, I'm super excited to be here. So, I mean, that was, even though it's exaggerated for this movie, it's a little bit relatable.
Yeah. And I was like, evidently I've clearly not been to a lot of concerts.
I'm just not a concert guy.
They're like, kind of in and out of the concert, like going to the concessions, going to buy a t-shirt during the concert. I'm like, do people do that? Like,
I don't know.
I thought once the band or person is performing, you're just in there locked in.
That's how I would be locked in, paying what you're paying for concerts.
Yeah, but I guess maybe with those big concerts like that are as performative as they are musical.
Yeah,
maybe they have like the breaks between so they can set up stuff, and that's when you go.
It could be.
The couple concerts I've been to are just actual bands who play their instruments all the time, and they just play straight. So there's never a point where you'd be like, let's bail for a little while and go visit the whatever.
Yeah, that was one of my very first kind of mental notes I made was like, this movie, it's funny because it's like a Shyamalan thriller is more, you would think the audience would be more adults, but like this, especially the concert part of this movie, felt like it was more for like the 12 to 14-year-old girl almost. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if right off the bat it's kind of aiming at conflicting audiences.
Yeah. And obviously we know that M. Night Shyamalan is a girl dad. Yeah. His daughter plays the musician in the movie.
She does.
Yeah, I do wonder if this idea for this movie wasn't spawned out of some experience he had, maybe going with his daughters to concert or even going to watch his daughter perform and just thinking, well, what would it be like if one of these concerts was also, this police sting operation?
I wouldn't be a bit surprised because it seems like, even doing a little Shyamalan research this week, all of his movies, they do come from some kind of personal, like even if the movie itself is wild and crazy, like it comes from some kind of personal experience. So I also wouldn't be a bit surprised.
Yeah. I think you mentioned this specifically already, but there is a lot of this would never happen in this movie. Like a lot of it. And
there is.
That's one of the things that like it keeps it from being a really good movie, I think. It does. Because there's so many moments of like this just is not how this would go down, or this. I mean, really starting with the main premise, you're like the police would just never use a place this populated to try. I mean, like, yeah, there's just too many other.
And I don't want to get too far ahead because I want to save my third act thoughts as we progress. But like, just the idea that like you come to find out that is it Lady Raven? Is that who? Like, she's basically like working with the police. And you're like, well, this is just ridiculous right off the get-go. I mean, it's literally like the equivalent of like, okay, the FBI like Taylor Swift is working alongside the FBI to bring down a serial killer. But that being said, as we already said, and I will try not to be repetitive, but it's like, okay, it is a ridiculous premise, but I was still able to latch on and be invested. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's just a slew of things in this movie that happen that you're like, okay.
Yeah, I think, watching this, I was going, M. Night Shyamalan is clearly, like we've talked about before, he's a very creative guy. He's got a great sense of like visuals and mood and atmosphere and stuff. And I think about his best movies, and almost all of them involve characters that are like socially withdrawn, don't interact with people very much. And like, no wonder, like it kind of shows as he's showing a character who obviously is a sociopath. The Josh Hartnett character is the butcher. He's the villain and all of that. But he's got to be like charming and actually like still interact with people and like win them over. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying those are bad scenes because that's what Josh Hartnett is he's really good at being charming. But the dialogue and like how he does it is always like, has M. Night ever actually like interacted with people before?
Has he ever talked to a human being?
Yeah,
I know.
So like, I know. The way he gets like bonds with the vendor and stuff, I'm like, this whole scene is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
But yet, I did find myself, I was kind of into how Josh Hartnett, like, I did think he had a little bit of a balancing act to do there. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes maybe to better results than others, but it's like, so in that first, let's say 20, 25 minutes, because pretty quickly into the movie, like the Josh Hartnett character finds out what's going on through, I mean, let's be honest, that was kind of a terribly written scene where that shirt, like the vendor guy, just literally tells him everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy might as well have been wearing a shirt that said, like, I'm here for exposition. And it's just like, that's a ridiculous scene. But I did kind of like Josh Hartnett having to, like, oh, crap. So I have to be a dad and act like I'm having fun. I have to be on the lookout for what all's going on. And I have to also express a little bit of, like, paranoia of like how am I going to get out of here? Like this whole movie was like, well, that didn't really work, but that kind of worked. It was like one step forward, one step backward, and it was just like it would very gradually inch towards like I'm starting to like this movie, but it was a gradual like like a turtle moving, along the road. And it was like, okay, I'm kind of into this.
And I think that's what it ultimately goes back to is we all like the premise.
Mm-hmm.
The premise is such a fun, enjoyable
it's a
premise.
Really fun premise.
That because the premise is ridiculous, but it's fun, we'll kind of like accept the things enough that are like, of course it wouldn't happen like this, or of course this wouldn't go down like this. But I'm happy to get there because it ends up giving us this scenario that is enjoyable.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't even know the timing breakdown of how long they're at the concert in the movie.
I kind of do.
Okay.
So, and I'll tell you why. Because I was like, I looked down at my phone at one point very quickly and very discreetly. Let me just point out, I'm a good movie goer. I have good movie etiquette. Because I was like, in my mind, I was like, man, I'm ready for them to be out of this concert. Mm-hmm. And I kind of glanced real quick and I was like, there's like 45 minutes left in this movie. And I was like, are they going to get out of the concert? And then I don't want to jump too far ahead, but they do. Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, so I would say like around 45 to 50 minutes they're in the concert. Mm-hmm. And it was like, it was a long 45 or 50 minutes.
It was. And again, like you, I don't want to jump ahead too quickly, but I think we're just going to have to kind of jump ahead because I thought it was ending a bunch of times. There was a bunch of scenes where I'm like, okay, here it is. Here's the big final scene. And it just kind of like, Lord of the Rings Return to the King dust. Like, no, there's another thing happening. No, there's another thing happening. There's another thing happening. And it's just kind of like, okay, that's the big twist, I guess, is that it's never over.
Never
when you
over.
Think it is.
Yeah.
So, we can kind of go back.
We'll come back to that. I have a lot of third act thoughts.
But yes, as much as we were in that concert for a long time, I couldn't believe that once we got out of the concert,
we still had like a half of a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, like, the concert, I want to stick on this for a second because it was a weird balance to me of like, dude, how many scenes do we need of Josh Hartnett being like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. Oh, man, I forgot my credit card. Oh, man. But yeah, I think what I wish they would have done is done more of like Josh Hartnett's like cat and mouse type stuff. Like, ooh, I swiped the security badge. Ooh, I swiped the walkie-talkie. Ooh, I threw the oil or whatever in the deep fry. Like, I was most into it when he was like manipulating the situation for his benefit. Less into it, of course, when he's just kind of roaming around. And then like there were times when I was like, oh, this might be a good suspenseful scene. Like when he goes up on the roof, for example. Mm-hmm. But then he's kind of like, hey, sorry, I didn't mean, it is like, well, that kind of just amounted to a whole lot of nothing. And I really wish what he would have done is lean more into like, here's how I'm going to manipulate this concert for my own benefit. Because I think he was onto something when it was like this conniving killer who can, like he pushes the lady down the stairs to kind of create a diversion. But then that really didn't lead to anything. So that's what I mean when I say it was a lot of like one step forward, one step backward. Because like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like I'm into Josh Hartnett being like manipulative and, working. Like I thought he did a really good job. Like when he gets like the badge and stuff and he's amongst the police and he just has to blend in and he's like, oh, I'll get, whatever, Dale's stash of sugar. And it's like, oh, I like this. Like, this guy is so good at leading like a second life. Mm-hmm. Like he can just lie and manipulate. And that stuff was good. But then it would just be like, okay, was that just like a 3-minute scene of Josh Hartnett just roaming around this concert?
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Let's maybe this is a good place to just go ahead and have this conversation. Do you think that this is going to be the comeback vehicle for Hartnett that it's sort of attempting to be?
I really hope so, honestly, because I thought he was really good in this movie.
Yeah,
let me just go ahead and say that. Like, no notes for him. I thought he did a really good job. I think sometimes when he was trying to be like he was leaning a little bit too much into like cheesy, lame dad, and that stuff felt a little clumsy to me. But not because of his performance. I think that was more of Shyamalan's writing.
That was my note. I had under it. I said something just felt like it came up a little short for me. I said, was it actor or script? And my lean is I think script was just a little odd. I think also just, like you said, it's a tough balancing act because it's doing the thing that has become kind of common in recent years. It's giving us a protagonist that is the villain. And so as a viewer, you're conflicted because you're going like, why am I rooting for this guy to get out? You know, like he's the butcher. Yeah. I should be rooting for him to get caught, but because I'm following him,
you kind of just naturally take his side.
Kind of take his side. I want to see him figure his way out. But it's also complicated because the way that the character's written, he's got to be, the great dad. And so as you're watching him, you're like, oh, like this is, sweet, and he's kind of normal. And then he's got the kind of criminal genius side.
Yep.
And the parts that didn't quite work enough to me were when he's just like cracks a little more as a villain. I mean, there's even like the moment where he's talking to the vendor, and the vendor talks about like how crazy the butcher is, and he kind of has like a real awkward like, like response, and like he makes a weird face, and it's like, what was that? Like you're this world-class liar. You would be able to look at a guy and just like
do better.
But it's sort of the movie thing to do. And I was like, I think that's more of an M. Night thing where he's like, I want you to have a weird response to that. And,
I think so.
And not a Hartnett thing.
Look, it's not like, man, give Hartnett the Oscar for this movie. But I think like number one, he has a lot to do in this movie. The camera is almost always on his face. And he's got to, whether it's believable, whether you like the premise, it's stupid, whatever you think, he's got a lot to do. And I think he pulled it off. And I think, like I said, and like you said, when it did come up short, I like Shyamalan, but I would cast more of that blame on him. And I thought he had a couple of, specifically in the concert, I thought he had a couple really cool moments. Like, I really like the scene when he is amongst all those cops and they're kind of having their meeting. And he's walking through the crowd and he's like, excuse me. And he smiles. And then the second he gets out of like their sight, he just gets, and I was like, okay, that was really well done. I thought, he's not doing a lot, but just to go from like, hey guys, how you doing? And then, he just gets like this mean face. And I thought he did a good job with that stuff.
Yeah. And even as he's like exiting, like you said at first, he's kind of like, oh shucks. And stuff. With the last couple, he gets like more bold, and you can tell like he kind of like bumps shoulders.
And then by the time he's out, he's just, And so it's like, you know what, Josh Hartnett? That was pretty well done. And I think too, like, I just kind of root for him anyway.
Yeah.
Because like I grew up watching some of his movies, most of them not really good, honestly. Like Halloween H2O, where he has the worst haircut in movie history. I remember he tried to do that like buddy cop movie with Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
It just did not work at all.
Which one that was?
Was it called like Hollywood Homicide?
Yeah.
Pearl Harbor. None of these movies are good.
Yeah.
But he always was like, you know what? I do kind of like this guy.
He was always like, The Faculty.
The Faculty, not a good movie.
No, but like,
you're just kind of
like buy stock in him. You're like, he's gonna find his role.
He is, and then like I literally remember last summer when he popped up in Oppenheimer, that got an audible reaction from people. Like they didn't go crazy, but you heard a lot of like, oh,
yeah,
like people were legitimately glad to see him up on the screen. Yeah. So long story short, I do hope this is kind of a comeback for him.
Yeah, I was hoping the same thing. I think it could be. I just don't know. Like, I don't get the sense. Like, sometimes you watch a movie and you just know, like, this guy. This
one's hard because honestly, it's not getting amazing reviews.
Yeah,
I think it made like $15 million this weekend. It's not a movie that's going to leave some kind of big impact. But if Oppenheimer started kind of a little bit of a comeback, I don't really think this is like some huge like oh well, this ruined it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's going to propel that momentum forward, but I don't think it's going to bring it to a screeching halt either.
Yeah, he's a tough guy to think of. Like, well, what's the like perfect role for Hartnett?
I don't have an answer,
and I don't know. And I kind of just thought like maybe he's perfect in like supporting roles, like Oppenheimer, just showing up and being like really likable and charming for a little bit, and again. I hate to say like overextending himself because I think he's a very talented guy and he looks like a leading man and he's good. Again, he was good in this movie. There's no problems with it. But there's something about him that I'm like, would another actor just have that little more like under the surface sinister to him or something?
Yeah.
That Hartnett doesn't have. And I think that maybe that's part of it was part of the swing is like, what if we take Josh Hartnett, who just seems like such like a great, normal
like a good
guy,
dude.
and we make him the villain. Like, of course, that's part of the casting, but it does make you wonder, what if it was somebody who has that more like natural, and I can't even think of anyone, I would think like younger Edward Norton or something like that. You know, somebody who
Oh,
plays those roles.
I don't doubt that there's a slew of actors that could have done more with the role, but you know what? I'm going to hold on to my Josh Hartnett stock.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to hold on to it.
Yeah. What do we think of Shyamalan's daughter as Lady Raven?
Okay. So again, I do kind of want to hold my third act thoughts.
Yeah.
I think that, I think it's definitely fair to say she probably wasn't quite ready to take on.
Yeah.
That being said,
her first acting role, we should point out. Yeah.
And so he gave her a lot to do, which we'll get into. I don't think I want to say though that she like fell flat on her face with it.
I'll say this: a lot better actor than her father, who just needs to stop being in his own movies.
So I was thinking,
not good.
I was thinking if I had Twitter or X, which I don't, my tweet would have been, my casting or my directing advice to M. Night Shyamalan: stop casting M. Night Shyamalan in your movies, please, bro. You're not a good actor.
No,
you're just not. But he loves to put himself in movies. I didn't mind her performance. It didn't hurt the movie for me, even if there were times where you could tell, like, I don't think she was quite ready to take on all that she's taking on. But it didn't bother me. I'm not mad. It's not Dakota Johnson was 500,000 times worse than Madam Web. Just to continue, look, we will bash Madam Web this entire year. Let's just go ahead and get that out.
Yeah.
What did you think? She's not great. But she didn't, like I said, I don't think she fell flat on her face either.
Yeah. I think she fit the part, and part because I guess she does make music. Like that's actually her.
She is a musician. Yeah.
That's her day job, I guess you would say. And like I said, this is her first acting role. Yeah. So her dad was like, "Hey, you make music. I'm making a movie with a musician. That's one of the leads. You want to come be the musician in it and play that." But yeah. I mean, for so much of the movie, like we said, at the concert, she's just up on stage, in the background. Yeah. And then, all of a sudden, act, it is like her movie all of a sudden.
I guess we should get into a little bit. Like, in a lot of ways, that's kind of the twist.
Mm-hmm.
Is that she all of a sudden is like involved in this. I couldn't believe, I was like, holy cow, I can't believe Shyamalan is going there with this and trusting in his never acted in a movie before daughter. Because they're for about 20 or 30 minutes once they leave the concert, it's her movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. She didn't like, it wasn't an all-timer or anything, but I think that could have gone a lot worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. A for effort. Let's say that.
I want to say this about the daughter in the movie, who I thought did a good job. That's a tough role where, hey, you're going to be in this movie, you're going to be in it a lot, and the entire time you've got to be super fangirl, and all you're going to do is just super fangirl about this artist the entire movie.
So that was my note too, my exact note. I thought she did a good job for the cards that she was dealt.
Yeah.
And it's like, you think about that girl having to give that performance, and it's like, it's got to be really hard to actually portray some kind of character and to not be annoying when your job is basically just to scream the whole movie.
Yeah.
And I think, while that is not any kind of amazing character, that could have gone so much worse also. Because it's kind of a thankless part. Like, you just have to be geeking out the entire time and literally screaming at the top of your lungs and doing like I'm at a concert with my dad and that's not really cool, but I have to, like, I thought she did pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah. And then every once in a while, she's just got to like point out, Dad, you're acting weird. Like,
yeah.
Why? And it, like, because the daughter would, like,
she would. He's definitely.
He is acting kind of weird because he's getting paranoid and starting to feel trapped in. Mm-hmm. And,
She's another one. And I'm not trying to just pick on Shyamalan, but, the writing just didn't do her a ton of favors because it also starts to stretch of like, how weird can your dad act until you're like, okay, like, this is like, there's only so many times where she can be like, are you okay? You're being weird. Because as the movie goes on, it's like, okay, he's getting really weird. Like, and so like, I think she did the best she could with what she was dealt from Shyamalan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk through some of the key beats of the movie here. So it lays the groundwork very quickly. I can't even remember who says it, but they talk about how the only way that isn't heavily covered out is backstage with the concert, and you go, okay, he's got to figure out a way to get
probably
backstage.
Mr. Exposition, probably the shirt guy, wasn't it?
It might have been because the other big exposition thing was the
like
lady profiler that he's listening to
Yes.
and it might have
Who
been her.
literally only exists to spout exposition.
Yeah. So yeah, once you know that like he gets that bug put in his head, like in his ear, that backstage is like the least guarded place. You're like, okay, he's got to get backstage, and he does it by he finds Shyamalan, who happens to be the artist's uncle. Like the random security guy or person standing near him is
her uncle.
Is the most connected person there,
of course. And
and
he does my kids had leukemia.
Yeah, like, but great job of like saying like she doesn't like to talk about it because she's cursed, so she doesn't bring it up. Like because you got to find a way to like to hide it from her that he's pulling that car, and he doesn't do anything like, so could you help us out? He just very slyly like, we're so glad to be here. Could you thank her for us? This is the greatest night for
and
my
again,
daughter.
That's the stuff I like. Where it's like, I like watching Hartnett like play chess with with this sting operation.
Yeah, and it works. And they call the daughter up on stage for what I can't imagine whatever happened at a real concert, because what a disaster you're inviting there. Just, hey, random girl, would you like to come here and dance with me?
Dance with me, like, and all your friends will be videoing it, and you'll surely never get made fun of. Which
did give one great funny moment, which was her like class rival, the girl whose mom keeps popping up, getting so mad that like she was on stage. I did get a laugh out of that.
Yeah. That was the stretch where I was like, that's when I was like, I am ready for this concert stuff to be over.
Yeah.
It felt like maybe, I don't know, like her dancing up on the stage, and Hartnett for like 5 minutes, all he was doing was just kind of standing there and like smiling at his daughter. And I was like, okay, we got to propel this story forward somehow. And then I will say, and then they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's an unanswerable question, but we can theorize about. Why was he so scared of going out with the mass of people? Like, what exactly was going to happen if he walked out and they stopped him for questioning? Like, I mean, I guess he doesn't know how much they know about him and like how they're on to him.
Yeah.
So you got to be paranoid. But I kept thinking like, so he walks out there and what are they? Sir, are you the butcher?
No.
Okay,
well,
good to go.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Because they didn't know. Yeah. They didn't know exactly. As a matter of fact, they had that scene where they're like, we've got some reports that say he's African American. We've got some reports. So, I think it's just, it's one of those things where you kind of just have to buy into the premise.
Yeah.
You just do. Because if you'll drive yourself crazy nitpicking, which even though we are kind of nitpicking, but yeah, you're right. Like, you the butcher? No. Oh, okay.
Seems good to me.
Yeah, it's like,
I mean, like he clearly charmed his way by everybody. That
I was gonna say that was kind of his
thing. Like,
dude, your thing is kind of that you charm and manipulate the situation. So just do that.
I feel like everything you're doing to get past all these people, you're having to do way more charming and manipulating than you would just like kind of straight on through.
You're right, but I will say, like, I guess some of these movie premises you just kind of have to accept because and Alfred Hitchcock did this all the time. The paranoia, like people are after me premise, it does work.
Yeah.
Like even if the movie is just so-so, or if you really peel the layers back of the premise, you find out it's ridiculous. But like just the basic, like I'm stuck somewhere. And like I did like the scenes where he would just like everywhere he looked there was cops, which probably is ridiculous, but it was an effective visual.
Yeah.
It's like literally everywhere he looked, just hordes of cops. And you're like, Shyamalan is tapping into something that is effective. And just the idea of like, of course the movie's called Trapped. Like I'm trapped and there's paranoia. Like that stuff does work. And it will kind of, I think it will make up for a lot of flaws. Because you're like, you know what? I get what they're doing here. So, but you're right. Well, just go out there and like they can't make you show them your phone with the the feed of like, dang it, I have to show them now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you said, by the time we get out of the concert, you're like ready for it to be out of the concert. So I was really glad when he finally revealed, when he said, can I have a conversation with you on our own? And I was like, okay, here comes more manipulation. And when he just says, you got me.
Dude,
and
that's so funny. When hey, can I have a minute? I was the exact same. I was like, I don't need another scene. I was like, what I really wish he would do is just be like, I'm the butcher. And then he did. I was like, yes, Thank you. That was great. That was a good beat of the movie, I thought.
Yeah.
And it was time for it.
Yeah.
I was ready for him to just, because actually up until that point, it was it in the back of your mind still that like maybe there's a twist on a twist?
Yeah.
For a second, I was like, maybe he is like the actual butcher is like, if you don't, I don't know. I just thought there'd be some kind of like the actual butcher is like manipulating Josh Hartnett somehow.
Right.
So I was ready for him to just come out and be like, I'm the butcher and you're going to get me out of here. And that's exactly what happened. So that was well timed by Shyamalan. I was ready for that.
Yeah. And so you think like, oh, okay, here now the movie's really going to propel forward. And as we talked about, no, there's a lot of movie left. It does not
lot of movie left.
Really, it like keeps feeling like, okay, now it's really like taking off, and it doesn't, because they get out to the car and then it becomes Shyamalan's daughter's movie. It becomes a Lady Raven movie, and she's like, hey, how about I go to your house, to the daughter? And of course the daughter wants her to come, and for some reason Josh Hartnett doesn't fight it any harder, or like,
you know what?
Because the movie has to keep going.
It does, but that stuff did kind of work for me. The Lady Raven Butcher like chess match.
Yeah.
I was kind of into it, I gotta say. Even if it was a little hokey and ridiculous, I was still kind of like, okay. And then like, I don't know if Shyamalan was purposely going for like, I want to make people feel super uncomfortable. But when they're all just sitting in Josh Hartnett's living room, I was like, okay, I'm like, this is awkward. Like, what is going to happen? So if that's what he was going for, it worked on me.
Yeah. And then she steals the phones and makes her way to the bathroom. And that's where she's able to save the guy, because she talks to the guy, gets the landmarks that she needs to like then stream to her fans to, figure it all out. Again, a scene where you're like, there's 0% chance that like whatever he is, 6'3" built serial killer
Dude's
Josh
just
Hartnett
breaking
is not
down
just
that door.
busting that door open immediately. But yeah, so but it's again one of those things. It would never happen like that. It was kind of ridiculous. It had to happen for the movie to work.
And you're also kind of at that point, you're kind of like, you know what? I'm here. I'm just gonna buy into this. That's kind of how I felt. It's like we're an hour into this movie, or an hour plus. I paid my money for this ticket. I'm just buying in.
Yep. So then she comes out, and the butcher has caught her more or less, takes her out to the vehicle. He's got to go back. Clearly, he's like got the contingency plan.
And that stuff happens. I thought was cool.
Yeah.
He even had like the little hidden compartment in his garage where he had his bag, and I was like, okay, again. The one step forward. I was like, I like this progression of the movie. But then it's like the garage door opens and his family's just kind of awkwardly standing there. And I was like, darn it, now we're kind of one step.
So then he goes back in the house while they all leave and the cops show up. But then he's escaped. Oh, he's actually taking over the limo for Lady Raven. And
so then you're thinking, now this is finally building to the finale.
Yes.
I thought it was going to be like him versus Lady Raven, like maybe even in that limo, like some kind of cool fight. Nope. He escapes from there. Okay. On to the next set piece. Yeah.
He goes back to the house, and now he's interacting with the wife. And, it just.
There was some strange beats, but I'll tell you what, if you kind of ignore like the weirdness of like, is this ever going to end, or like, the clumsiness kind of the story, I thought the individual scenes kind of worked. So like I'll backtrack just a minute. So he takes Lady Raven out of the bathroom, puts her into the vehicle. He grabs his like contingency bag. And he's like, put these zip ties on. And then I don't know that it was great acting on her part, but she kind of tries to do like she was kind of acting like his mom.
Yeah.
I don't know that she was really great in that, but it's like, I was kind of into the like, man, she is just going to keep battling this guy. She is throwing every weapon she knows how to at this guy. And then Hartnett, I thought, was really good in that scene. And he finally is like, put the blanket cuffs on, and it was like, he would get menacing. And it was like, you know what? He's kind of pulling this off. And I actually think I would have just enjoyed if at that point, if the family would have been out of the movie and it would have become this Lady Raven versus the butcher, like chess match, like I keep saying, because I was kind of into it, even if, maybe her acting wasn't quite there yet. I was kind of into it.
Yeah. Instead, like honestly, after the whole limo scene and where she gets away from him and then he gets away, and it, like I said, goes back to the house with the wife. That's really where we get the big twist, the Shyamalan twist. I guess it really wasn't a big twist,
but it was a little wrench in the.
As you're watching a Shyamalan movie and waiting for what's the twist going to be, it was this movie's version of a twist at the end, because the reveal is, and again, big spoilers for anyone listening, that the trap was really set by the wife who put it in motion by taking the ticket or the receipt for the ticket he had bought for the concert and hiding it at one of his stash houses, basically, and then calling the cops. And it was this whole thing which I did think was a nice touch, because in part of my whole this would never happen, I was thinking with the whole concert premises, there's no way he could know that they could know he's going to be at the concert without knowing enough other information to do it somewhere else. But saying like all that they found was the receipt, I was like, okay, I guess at least you give me some reason to think this is the place that they would, although there'd still be all sorts of questions of, well, what if that just belonged to one of his victims, or what if, what if the target is Lady Raven, not, all this stuff. So anyways, just, it still leaves a lot of questions, but it at least gave us some form of answer of why it had to be the concert.
It did. And really, I thought that was a pretty well acted scene between him and her.
Yeah.
And like this husband-wife stuff, and him being like, you knew, didn't you? Like, they were both kind of one step ahead of each other. And I thought that was, just a little bit of a unique twist on this kind of familiar territory that we're in.
Yeah. I do feel like M. Night, and again, this is sort of evidenced by like what we're saying, the lack of like a concise ending, like it kept drawing on. I feel like he didn't know quite how to wrap
put a
it
bow
out
on the story.
So like she ends up feeding him pie with some of the drugs from his go bag that she found. So he's like, oh, I'm not gonna make it. And then the cops come in and start tasing him. He's fighting back.
There's always just one more thing happening.
It just kept on going. And I'm like, he just can't quite figure out that right way to really tie the knot, and
I thought it did give Harnett a cool moment though, when he's getting tased and stuff and he's still going, and you're like, whoa, like Harnett, like you're pretty menacing right here.
Yeah, because we've said that a couple times about him being menacing in this movie, but it really is scarce in the movie. And I actually thought one of my thoughts
more effective.
Was they maybe even could have made him more menacing, because about the most menacing thing we actually get to see him do, I mean, obviously, like you said, there's the moment where he pushes the lady a little bit who's already like near fainting down the stairs. That's obviously not cool, bro. But the most menacing thing he does, which was very effective, was that scene, like you said, he turned up the grease and put the oil in it, and when it burst and that girl's like, that's a like jarring,
pretty harrowing scene,
kind of hard to look at when she's on the even on the stretcher and still like screaming and stuff, and he's just calm as can be, like walking by. It doesn't affect him that he did that at all.
Care less.
And I'm like, those are the few moments that you get where you really get to sense like how menacing he is, because other than that, it's just sort of like talk. He's called the butcher. They talk about how
he's chopped them into pieces,
but you don't get to see his like.
Yeah, it's not a just a gore. You don't see him murder anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Like there is not a single death in the movie.
Not even a flashback or anything. So yeah, like I thought he was really good when they were tasing him and stuff. And then he like leaps on that copper and he's like jamming his thumbs into his eyes, and you're like, holy cow! Like that little burst of menace for him was effective to me.
Yeah.
And that was really when it sunk into me, where it was like, you know what? This movie is a little ridiculous. But as they were tasing him, I did find myself being like, man, get him. Like, go down, Hartnett. And it was like, that's how I know the movies at least got me a little bit invested.
Yeah.
It was like, I wasn't sitting there going, I don't care if he lives. I don't care if he dies. I just want this movie to end. I was like, oh, I hope they get him. Like, he just keeps getting away. So, I got to give it to the movie. It for better or worse, it had me invested.
Yeah. Did you at any point have suspicions that was what the twist was going to be?
That the wife was...
Yeah, or just
for a hot second there, as the wife, she puts the cliched movie like boiling water kettle, is that's why does everyone always do that in a movie?
Because nobody's actually done that since like 1960s.
Nobody sets a kettle on the stove. Anyway, for a hot second, I was like, oh, is the wife his partner?
I did wonder that.
And I thought, like, what I thought was going to happen is like she was going to turn around and he was going to be there, which is what happened. Then I thought they were going to be like, well, they almost had us, and then it was like, then I thought it was just going to pop up like an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and it's like, there's this big twist that they're in it. They didn't do that. So I thought maybe for a second that's what he was going to do.
My thought of a twist was that Lady Raven was going to end up being the target the whole time. And I thought there's going to be a moment where it's like, the whole family was in on it. And when she ended up in the house with them all,
She
and she was like, yeah, she's thinking, I'm trying to catch him. And she didn't realize she just went right into the lair where they all are. And like, she's not coming back out.
Yeah.
I thought that might be the twist. But I also thought we were really close to the end in that moment. And we weren't. So
And we were not. No.
Yeah, I did not have the wife like was the one that was on to him.
No,
and so
that's pretty good, clever writing, because it didn't feel like, to me, where it wasn't just like, well, it's time, like Shyamalan, like, well, I got to do a twist. Like, it felt like it progressed kind of naturally. It didn't feel like a cop out or like a cheat of like, well, that makes no sense at all. That's just a twist for the sake of a twist. If that makes any sense. So it didn't bother me, and I kind of appreciated the writing of it.
Yeah, I will be curious if I rewatch this one, because we've talked about this with The Sixth Sense, how Shyamalan, his best gift with the twist is that usually when you rewatch it, you go like, yeah, like it holds up under the scrutiny of that was the reality all along. And I would be curious to rewatch it and think like, this. And part of it is he sets up scenarios where the way people act makes sense both ways you look at it. So the mom is acting very strange, but it's because this pop star has showed up at their house, that she wasn't expecting, and it's really awkward. Like, how do I host this pop star? But then you find out later on the rewatch, you'll know it's because she thinks, I'm pretty sure the cops were supposed to be like catching my husband or interrogating him. And here he is, and he's got the pop star with him. Like, what is going on?
And that kind of makes you view the wife's performance in a different light. Because again, just as much as we're talking about Hartnett having to balance a lot of things, if you think like her character, she's balancing a lot of, like you said, like, oh, wait a second, this is not going like it's supposed to. But the audience doesn't know that I know that, So I mean, like, and maybe this would be a movie where if I did watch it again, it'd be like, you know what? I maybe didn't give that movie quite enough credit for some of the things it did.
Yeah. So after watching this movie, where are we with M. Night?
I think where I landed is it, unfortunately, and I could be wrong, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, it does feel like, for whatever reason, he just peaked really early. Like we talked about when we did The Sixth Sense on our 1999 podcast. When he came out of the gate with Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs, that was a great start. In my opinion, you shared that opinion.
Yes.
So it maybe feels like he peaked. I think where I am with Shyamalan is, if his kind of role now is to just make these decent thrillers, then I'm okay with that. Like if he's going to make Knock at the Cabin, is that what that was called? Knock at the Cabin? Another movie where you're like, that really wasn't the best movie, but it wasn't bad. That's exactly where I landed at with Knock at the Cabin. So as long as he doesn't dip back down into like Lady in the Water and Last Airbender and After Earth, which that was a pretty low. If he wants to keep trying to make, these, like you talked about, like 2-sentence movie pitches, and he wants to put them up on screen, I'll probably keep watching them. So like, I'm not down on Shyamalan necessarily. I'm just no longer expecting, like I've talked before. Signs is one of my favorites. I think Signs just, that's a movie where just every decision went right and was the right decision. I hate to say this, I hate to sound negative, but I've kind of almost given up at him recapturing that.
Yeah.
But if he can find these, like, so I rewatched Old this week.
Okay.
And that's another one where you're like, this movie is pretty ridiculous, but I'm kind of into it in a way.
Yeah.
I'm okay if that's just where he is.
Yeah. You nailed it. First 3 movies were 3 home runs. I think about, the M. Night Shyamalan Mount Rushmore is his first 3 movies, and then a question mark for the 4th. It kind of comes to individual taste. And I keep waiting, I was hoping that Trap would be like, here's
clearly this is the
career.
4th.
He's finally got a 4th one to go up with these other 3 that belongs, that fits. But instead it's kind of like, probably not Trap. I don't know, Split maybe, which is just a really great performance by James McAvoy. It was a good movie, but mainly you walk out of that one thinking McAvoy, not necessarily Shyamalan. Knock at the Cabin might, it's
fine.
I don't know. But there hasn't been a 4th movie that feels like it fits with those first 3 as far as the Mount Rushmore. Here's what I actually would love for Shyamalan. I would love for Shyamalan. This is what I actually say: Shyamalan and his daughter, who made The Watchers, get together and make like an anthology series for someone like Netflix or Amazon Prime, HBO. Make 10-hour-long episodes where you take these gimmicks. A movie like Old, I think, would have been a great 1 hour
movie.
You know, I think Trap would have been a great 1 hour movie. He's so great at these unique premises, and I think one of the biggest problems with a lot of these movies is he's got to stretch these premises out to an hour and a half. And it's the same for his daughter's movie, The Watchers.
Yeah,
like,
it's
I think
a cool idea.
If they took these and started doing a Black Mirror type series of just like, all I need is a cool premise, and we just have to stretch it for an hour so we don't have to overdo anything. I think all of a sudden, like, they can make a 10 episodes of that series. That would be huge. That would be awesome. It would just play right into their strengths, limit their weaknesses. And like, once I thought of it, I was like, this is all I want for Shyamalan.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Because, like, clearly the guy knows how to come up with good ideas.
Yeah.
And a lot of his stuff, you know, a majority of his stuff is original. You know, I actually, you know, I just found out like Old, he took from some kind of like graphic novel. But anyway, that's weird, really weird. But like, he's really good at coming up with these original ideas. But like you said, sometimes the idea is good, but then it's like, so now how do I stretch it into an hour and 45 or 2 hour movie? Great idea. Anthology.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I guess I'll say this. I'm really happy that it's no longer After Earth and Last Airbender. Like, you know, and we talked about this, so I won't dwell on, you know, it's like the high, a really low. And it does feel like he's been climbing back up from that low. And, you know, I'm definitely not anti-Shyamalan. If he can keep coming up with original ideas or, you know, unique ideas like this, I'll most likely still give them a chance. But, dude, stop casting yourself in your own movies. Let me just say that one more time.
Yeah.
You're not good.
Like, I get that, you're motivated for that with your inspiration, Hitchcock. But Hitchcock used to do the thing of, like, walk through the background and can you catch me? Like, that's all you need to do. You don't need speaking parts.
You don't need speaking parts.
Yeah, you don't need any sort of connection to the main plot line.
No. I wanted to ask you a question about this movie. What do you think was the purpose of the mom and the friend of the young girl? Because he devoted. I was surprised at how much there was two or three separate scenes of Josh Hartnett and that mom bumping into each other, kind of like roaming outside the concert, and he gave them a lot of time. Why?
He really did. Yeah, I think if I had to guess, it was an excuse to show like that he is a good dad, and maybe that's why, as a good dad, he's at this concert with his daughter, just him and his daughter.
Yeah,
you know, because you think about it, like, it is sort of, it's like you said, it's for teenage girls. You know, wouldn't she be happiest there with a group of other teenage girls?
Right.
And so that you have to have this whole sort of plot line of she's on the outs with her friends.
That's
and
true, I guess.
So
maybe
like,
just to try to explain.
Yeah, he's the one that's going through this thing with her.
I thought it was just a super, just clumsily written scene where the mom of the other girl like lashes out at him.
It was clumsy. I did think it was funny though for her. You know, she's saying like, you don't want to say
screw
I have
with
a
me.
dark side you don't know
maybe
about.
That was, maybe it was almost supposed to be unintended, like funny.
Yeah, and you're looking to go like, you're
You're
talking to a 6'3" serial killer.
That's
right
true.
now.
Maybe that's what it was. That stuff just was a little strange to me.
Yeah.
I was like, I would have rather them just completely cut those characters out.
And I think the other thing in that scene is as she's sort of lashing out at him, he's looking around and it's sort of raising the attention of the cops. This lady yelling, and so he quickly has to like diffuse it.
Maybe.
And
I just was curious what your thoughts were. It came across, just like I said, just a little clumsy to me.
It was, and the running into her multiple times was a little.
And I was like, why is there another? I guess part of what I mean too is like there was just no payoff to it.
Yeah.
Like for a second, I was like, oh man, he's gonna kill this lady, and I thought that was when it would be like he is the butcher. Like I thought maybe she'd go into the bathroom or something, and he would follow her, and it was like, uh-oh, lady. And nothing really happened. Yeah. That just was a little odd to me.
Yeah, I think ultimately, if there is a criticism of this movie besides some of the stretching of belief, is that it's a very tame movie.
It is tame.
Like we said, there's 0 deaths in the movie, and not that I'm some weirdo going like, we need more deaths in movies, but it's just for a movie about police cornering a serial killer in a very public place, there's very little tension of like people being in danger. In fact, the couple times where there might be people in danger, it's almost played for laughs. Like the vendor that's helping him, and the vendor hands him the
knife.
Yeah, the knife. He's like, "Can you hold that for me?" And you're like, he's not going to kill this vendor because everything's just kind of being for comedic relief with this vendor, and he's handed him that, and you kind of laugh at, he just handed a serial killer, a knife, and he gives it back, and you never really felt tension that he was going to kill that guy.
No.
So yeah, I kept waiting for moments like that where he was pushed far and had to do something like that. Like he had to take somebody out, and he's got to hide a body while he's, just to add more and more like problems for him.
Yeah.
And it just never really.
I could have gone for more. And I'm like you. I'm not trying to sound like a weirdo. Like, I need to see someone get their head chopped off. But yeah, maybe could have used a little bit more of that. But like I said, not a movie I regret seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just. I kept thinking of we talk about one of our favorite podcasts a lot, the rewatchables, and they'll talk about the flawed rewatchable.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a flawed rewatchable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned how full your theater was when you saw it. Mine was a decent.
I would say decent theater is an accurate word,
but I would say the audience skewed older. Is
Mine
one thing
too.
I noticed,
and there was no.
I guess it's M. Night Shyamalan fans are going to be older. People who have been with him since the first movie. Josh Hartnett fans are going to be older. So even though, like you said, a lot of this movie is sort of weirdly like teen oriented, the audience was definitely skewing older.
Same in my theater. Not a huge crowd. Decent crowd, and I felt like it was all people around my age is how I felt, for sure. I don't know, like I said, maybe just a strangely marketed movie in a sense of because the trailer of course doesn't give you really much indication at all that they leave the concert,
right?
So it makes it feel very, and you clearly get the vibe from the trailer, like this is very much like teenage girl-esque concert, or a concert for the teenage girl demographic. I definitely did not see teenagers in my theater.
Yeah. I don't know. Is Josh Hartnett not hot to teenage girls anymore?
I don't know.
Too old?
I don't know.
Surely he is. I don't know why I said that sentence. So moving on a little bit from this movie, you mentioned it that it's not had a great box office opening weekend. It's not. I mean, it's
kind of a soft opening. Not embarrassing.
It wasn't a huge budgeted movie, so that's the good
Shyamalan's
news for
movies usually at least turn a little bit of a profit because he's ever since he's had these big failures with After Earth and stuff. He's just making very modest movies, and that's what I mean too when I say I'm glad movies like this exist. Not every movie needs to have a $250 million budget. Yeah, I guess to answer your question, maybe to go backwards, that's what I hope Shyamalan does, is just keep making, 30, 40, $50 million movies.
Yeah.
That just have to make $65 or $70 million to turn a profit. That may be his sweet spot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But looking just at the overall box office numbers for this year, I just wanted to point out a couple things because we've talked about it in recent weeks, the change in the year's box office success. Deadpool and Wolverine is all the way up to 4th highest grossing movie of the year. Yeah. Just, we haven't even completed its second weekend.
Yeah.
And it's
probably better now because it made just under $100 million this weekend.
Well, and I was going to say, it is just a hair behind Despicable Me 4 for 3rd place.
Yeah.
It'll pass that. It'll pass Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
I don't know that it will catch Inside Out 2 because Inside Out 2 is double the second place of Dune 2. It is insane how much money that movie has made. But largely bolstered. I mean, Inside Out 2 is $1.5 billion, and $900 million of that is foreign markets. So, which is double the next highest foreign market gross. So, so Deadpool and Wolverine climbing. A Quiet Place Day 1 is at 9. Twisters is at 10. I'm glad to see both those movies getting into the top 10.
Me too.
Of the year's budget. It finally bumped out the Garfield movie, which was in the top 10 for a long time.
Dang it. One of my favorites.
So
I would like to say, talking about box office, I'll throw this in. I was just reading where Longlegs I think I'll get this right. It's the highest grossing independent horror movie in the last 10 or 11 years. Yeah. It's really put up some good numbers.
Well, I was going to mention Longlegs because unfortunately it doesn't look impressive on the long list. It's number 27 right now. It's made $76 million. Only $12 million of that is foreign. It's, for whatever reason, not one of those movies that's getting a big foreign boost. So it's mostly domestic, which in a lot of ways makes it more impressive. So as I'm looking at a lot of the movies ahead of it, it's done better domestically than a lot of the movies ahead of it. It just doesn't get a lot of foreign.
And it's all relative too, because Dune Part 2 probably cost $300 million to make.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Longlegs' budget was $10 million.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just again to compare it to something, not even Dune 2, but Madam Web, the movie we love bashing on here, is 21st on the year. It made $100 million. So it made more than Longlegs, but it cost significantly more than Longlegs. So it's not more profitable. And then for Madam Web, over half of that gross was foreign.
Yeah.
56 million of the 100 million was foreign boxes. So Longlegs has actually done way better domestically than Madam Web.
I love the box office. I love to study it. It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, July has just been and we alluded to this maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. Like, even if it's been some movies that we don't really care about, the obvious ones would be Inside Out 2 and Despicable Me 4. I'm really glad the box office July has been very good to the box office, and Twister seems to have some staying power, and it's getting a lot of my kids are like, man, I see tons of TikToks about Twisters. And it's like, I always feel like that's a good sign that a movie has made some kind of, it's left its footprint on the culture in some way or another. So look, I've said it once, I've said it a million times. I want movies to succeed.
Yeah.
So if it takes Inside Out 2 making $1 billion, I will accept that.
Yeah. It'll be really interesting to see how the year continues to play out, because there is the possibility that July ends up being the sort of weird blip in the.
I gotta say, I don't
domestic. Yeah,
I agree, because I don't feel like there's a ton of potential box office smashes coming out over the next couple of months. I could be wrong.
No,
I'm always happy to be proven wrong.
And sometimes what that ends up leading to is a movie that you wouldn't suspect that ends up being a much bigger
clears
hit
the path
because, maybe at Christmas time, Nosferatu becomes a big hit because it's got some name recognition, it looks stylish, and there's nothing else really competing.
Did you see the trailer in front of Trap?
Yeah.
Did you like the trailer?
Yeah, I did like the trailer, but I'm just so hesitant because
we hate some of this dude's movies.
Yeah, and
Lighthouse. I'm looking at you.
Yeah, his last movie, The Northman, I thought had a really cool trailer, and I was like, I'm not gonna fall for it again.
That great,
yeah,
was it?
He just has to be so weird.
He's a weird dude.
And I'm just thinking, it's very easy that the trailer even looks weird, but it could be the most normal stuff in the movie is the scary thing.
I know. Cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, but so something like that could come through. But really, I'm not sure. We've talked about it. What I'm really looking forward to being a big hit in the fall here. Gladiator 2, maybe, of all things.
Maybe.
I'll say this: I am shocked how many people I hear talking about that are interested in Gladiator 2. Even when I'm at theaters and the preview comes on, people around me are like, hey, Gladiator 2. I was walking out of the theater, and again, skewing older, the people that were in the theater with me, an older couple saw the poster for Gladiator 2, and the guy stopped and hit his wife and was like, hey, look, Gladiator 2. And I'm like, people are apparently more excited than I am for Gladiator 2, so maybe that's going to be a much bigger hit than I expect.
Maybe. One thing I've learned, doing this with you is sometimes, a lot of times we are right about stuff, and sometimes I am so wrong. Mm-hmm. I think something like Gladiator 2 will come out and nobody will care, and then it turns into some big deal. So, I don't know. Yeah. We'll see. But like I said, to me, the most exciting thing is maybe just thinking, like you said, the path will kind of be cleared for some movie to just emerge and really end up doing well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Would.
Like you said, I think we've had a good year of movies so far. It's been I could easily have a top 10 of movies that I love.
Me too.
Already this year.
I was just actually reviewing my list of movies I've seen in the theater this year, and it's like, you know what? Good list. I mean, there's some duds in there. Yeah. There's definitely some duds, but I'm really happy with a lot of the movies I've seen this year.
Yeah. Hopefully we can continue that trend of movies that we really enjoyed next week. We're on a great run. We've talked about it between ourselves.
Yeah.
4 weeks in a row. We've talked about a new movie. I think we're going to try to make it 5 weeks in a row next week.
Yeah.
Talk about Cuckoo.
Yeah.
Which is a new horror movie.
And just looks super normal and not weird at all.
Exactly.
It did make me wonder, because every preview I saw at Trap, I think you could qualify as weird horror. And I was like, is this where horror is going? Like, is it going to just get weird?
There tends to be trends
There does.
in the horror genre where a certain subgenre becomes the predominant one for a stretch. And I think we are in kind of weird horror.
It might be. And look, if it works, I'm all for it because, as said many times on here, I'm a horror movie fan. And I do feel like it's been a good horror movie year. So I hope that continues.
Yeah. So we got Cuckoo next week, which is a sort of that new style weird horror. The following week, we've got more of a throwback sci-fi horror with Alien Romulus.
Yeah.
So I'd be more excited about that one if I hadn't seen a preview, because it's one of those previews I feel like gives away way too much. And you know what? I'm sure I'd still enjoy the movie. I don't think it ruined the movie, but I just was mad the entire preview. Every shot they showed, I was like, don't show me that. Don't show me that.
Like, yeah, you're giving away your prime shots. Like, we'll rant about that, I'm sure, when we do Alien Romulus. But that's another one I hope is good. I like the dude who did it. I like his movies. Mm-hmm. So hope
it's got Kaylee Spaney in it, who I bought tons of stock after Civil War.
War. I actually just re-listened to our Civil War episode, and we really sang her praises. So I hope she's really good in this movie. Yeah. Yeah. So they're just, again, excited that we've still got movies to look forward to coming out. And you know, one cool thing that happens when there's not just blockbusters is it does force you, like, I don't want to say I get out of my comfort zone, but it makes me go watch something that maybe I normally wouldn't. Yeah. So like, Cuckoo's a perfect example where it's like, you know, I don't know that I would have given that movie a shot, but because we want, you know, some new material to talk about. Because
it was that or what is it, Borderlands or Badlands or whatever that movie is coming out.
Let me just say, we're kind of just talking right now. That movie looks terrible. And maybe it'll come out and I will be proven wrong as I am. That looks so bad. And maybe it's just, I just don't like Eli Roth. I don't like Eli Roth's movies. I don't think he's talented. I think his movies are just gross. And so I don't know that I'm very willing to go watch Borderlands. It looks just so annoying. Yeah.
It's a strange collection of actors. I'm still not sure what Cate Blanchett's doing in that movie.
What is she doing?
That's really the thing that makes me hope that it's good, because I'm just like,
I know.
Cate Blanchett, like, what
are you doing?
Yeah.
That just looks so weird, and it just doesn't look like a good movie to me. And I haven't heard one person talk about it. And it comes out, I think, this coming weekend, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go ahead and I'll put a prediction on the record here. I think that'll bomb.
Yeah, I think most likely.
I think it'll bomb. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're not planning to see that. We're planning to see Cuckoo. Yeah. So, you know, hopefully that one will be better.
And most importantly, you're back. Yeah, and we're back together.
We're here.
I mean, we were still here.
Yeah.
We were still here, but this is the ideal situation.
This is much better.
It is.
Than doing it over the computer.
It is.
Yeah. I hope everybody else is excited as we are. We really appreciate everybody joining us.
Yeah. And appreciate people, you know, sticking with us while we were apart for the summer.
Yeah,
that was cool. I was noticing, like, okay, people are still watching some of these videos that you're putting out, even if we're doing it over the computer. So for sure. So keep going to the movies, people.
Yeah, keep going to the movies. Keep interacting with us. Let us know. You know, you see a movie, just come on our Facebook page or Twitter, Instagram, and just say, like, hey, I saw this and this is what I think.
Yeah,
we always want to know.
Let's just say this too. Feel free, you are more than free to disagree with us and tell us why you think we're wrong. We are not so we're not so bullheaded that we think we're always right. Yeah. And that's the cool thing about movies. You know, I always tell my kids this, because my kids will do this thing where, like, they'll watch a movie that, like, so Molly went, she watched Poltergeist this week, the 1982 Poltergeist. She's heard me talk about it. It's a movie I really like. And she was like, Dad, and she kind of paused for a second. She's like, I did not like that movie at all. And I was like, Molly, that's okay. You don't have to agree with me. You know, I can give you recommendations, but it's up to you to decide whether you like the movie or not. And she did not like Poltergeist. So, point being, it's okay if you disagree with us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We just want to hear from you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for watching.
Thank you. Good to be back together.
We'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.